All right. So welcome back. I know it's been a long time and you're like, well, is this class actually going to run or not? But 2 weeks is a long time, but we made it this far. So let's surge ahead. All right. Oracle Academy. We're moving on, believe it or not, to module 2 in our little journey here. And our topic for this module is columns, rows, and data types. Well, that's the first topic. Our objectives, we're going to look at concatenation, using the concatenation operation to link columns, link basically, and you'll see what I mean there, arithmetic expressions or constant values to create character expressions. That's usually very, very good when you're creating specific types of reports as far as format. Oops, there we are. All right. Okay, that's first objective, edit, execute, and save SQL statements in the developer. Yeah, everyone still has their developer running. Any issues with the developer? I said we're not going to address any. I know you're all experts. I know you've been spending several days just testing those queries, right? All right, yeah, just say yes. All right, use column aliases to rename columns. This is very useful in query results. Remember, essentially what you're going to do is create something that looks like a report. Enter literal values. These are actual values that you can enter during your select statement of data type char, which are strings, numbers, or date, into the select statement. Once again, very useful. And then finally, define and use the distinct command to eliminate duplicate rows. And you can probably guess what the distinct command does. Yeah, basically it will eliminate any duplicates or copies, etc. So why do we need to do this? All right, suppose you're writing an article about the Olympics. So you might want to know how many different countries and athletes are participating. Going through a list of names could be tedious. Fortunately, using SQL, the job would take less than a minute, and it really does. I mean, and they really do use a database. Whenever you fill out those forms, because you're a participant or an athlete, it all gets stored in a database. So in addition, the output could be formatted to read like a sentence, and that's the key to this particular part of our learning process to the select statement. So you're going to learn many ways SQL can be used, which is one reason why you decided to take this class. All right. So a table in our Oracle relational database system, and that's pretty important to remember that acronym RDBMS, is a logical structure that stores data in rows and columns. You probably have an intuition about that already. And believe it or not, this particular structure has been around a lot of years. I mean, well, probably less years than I've been around, but it's still used, more than 50 years later in its inception. So it is truly the fundamental block of a database, excuse me. So what you're looking at now, I mean, it's been around a while, and still with all the usages of data now, AI, machine learning, all these high-level things, they still use databases that are primarily structured in tables. And so tables are used to store and organize data efficiently, enabling easy retrieval, insertion, updating, which is, I know that's the main reason why you're all here. So I know some of you, this will be rudimentary, so bear with me. I mean, we don't have, not all of you are experts, so if you want to play your music really loud and say, to keep yourself awake, that's fine. But we are going to talk about table structure. A table consists of columns, and this represents the attributes of the data. And remember that term, attributes. We talked about entities briefly. We're going to go into that more. And a table is essentially an entity or an object of the database, but the columns are an attribute of the table. So please kind of, make that association or connection. So each column has a name, a data type, and a size. And the different data types that we're going to be concentrating on are strings, which are varchar 2. And you're probably wondering why it's varchar 2. Yeah, there was a varchar 1 or varchar, but the developers or creators decided, let's enhance the size of the database. So hence our data type is varchar 2. And then number and date. So those 3 data types are primarily what we're going to use. So an example of that, if you look at the employees table, you have an employee ID, last name, first name, email, phone number, columns, as well as others, but those are all one of these types of data. Yes, there are more data types out there, and you'll learn about those, not so much in this class, but you will run into them, but they're treated the same way. And give me a minute, I'm going to shut my door because they're vacuuming. So, well, someone's waiting to get into class. Okay. All right. Woohoo. Right. Hope everyone had their dinner already, or you can eat, turn your camera off and eat. I'm okay with that. But anyway, let's continue. And along with those columns, remember columns, think of it like, if you want to remember it this way, columns are basically associated vertically, whereas rows are essentially associated horizontally. And these are the records in your table. They represent a single record in the table. So columns and rows. A single employee's data in that employees table is considered a row. All right. The first basic command that you need to learn is the describe command. It's usually indicated by DESC, or you can, if you're very bothered by shortened acronyms, you can actually type in describe, and that will work as well. But we're all about shortcuts, right? So the command is describe, DESC, and what that will give you the structure of the table. Now, I will tell you that there's many iterations of this, but in our developer, the way it's designed, the structure of the table will look like this. So if you type in, and you can do this now if you want, if you type in DSC employees, you'll get something like that, well, just like this. Since I just ran this, or I ran it before, you get all the column names. You get whether it can be null or not. And we're going to talk about constraints later. And then the data type. Now, in some instances, or some of you that are database gurus or former database administrators, you're like, wait, isn't the describe supposed to give you more information? No. Well, I'll just tell you, no, not in the developer. Essentially, this is where, okay, I'm thinking that you're probably wanting to know primary key, foreign key, and all that. That's a little bit different, but describe is like the shortcut to get the information about your table. There's other ways there's actually other tables that will give you additional information about tables, but we'll get into that later. But simply running your describe command will give you this information, which is very important. You see the data types and the size. Now, these numbers in the parentheses are the size of the data, and that basically limits it to the size or the amount of data that you can put in each of these columns. Like first name is limited to 20. And yes, you can change those and alter those, and we're going to get into that later. This number, you see this 8,2, I'll just reference this quickly. Basically, that's right and left side, or left and right side of the decimal. So it's indicated that this is going to be 8 on the left side, 2 digits on the right. And basically that's how you would illustrate or how you would display that, because these are, monetary, and this is percentage, but still we want to reference it or display it as a complex number. Does that make sense to everyone? I just want to make sure that the way you read this, you can read the data type. I do want to mention that the date, you've seen the date before. There's a specific format that in this database system, it is not standard across different database management systems. But for Oracle, yes, you'll see that that display of 2-digit day to 3-letter month. And I think I have to remember this. I think it's 2-digit year. We're well over the whole concern about Y2K. So 2-digit year is fine. So remember that. All right. Have to remember to make sure people are not waiting in the waiting room. All right. Let's continue. Well, let me just make sure. Hey, 100% attendance. Good job. Everyone's here. Woo-hoo. All right, let's continue. All right, so basically this is an illustration of what I've just been blabbering about. We will learn how to view other table objects, as I said before, later. So if you're concerned about other attributes or other parts of the table, we'll learn that. And I just essentially talked about this. This table structure is pretty important. So begin to develop a tuition of using this command to look at the structure of your table. Remember, this is not the data in your table. It's just the structure of your table. And that's what I refer to here. Now to actually view, so how did I get, let me ask you, because this has to be interactive. How did I get this result here? Who can tell me what was the SQL statement to get this result? You can type it in the chat or unmute and scream it out. How did I get this result table?
Select star from employees.
Thank you. That is correct. Everyone agree with that? All right. Everyone remember that? You're all pretending what you remember. You have to run it though if you don't remember. So yes, select star from employees. All right. So make sure you're pretty comfortable with that. All right, we're going to surge right ahead and talk about concatenation. So what does concatenation mean? Who's going to give me the definition of concatenation? Who wants to be? Yes, go ahead, Vera.
I'm familiar with it in the context of programming. So typically you would use it in a string to combine two, like, let's say a variable plus text. So you might say, quote, there are, and then end quote, and then you would do a plus, and then you would put the variable name, and then you would do another plus, and then you would add the rest of the string. So I'm assuming it's somewhat similar in this.
It's very similar to that, but you won't use the operator plus. Just remember that. It's a little bit different, but that's the idea. You're combining strings, and usually you're combining them to create a specific result in your result table. So Vera just gave us all the particulars about concatenation. The whole idea is to link two strings together, or to link any object together, but primarily we're going to stick with strings. The symbol for concatenation in SQL is 2 vertical lines. That's the lines above, we call them a pipe, above the backward slash, which is next to the square brackets, if you don't know on your keyboard, depending on what keyboard you have, but there's 2 of those. That stands for concatenate. So like what Vera described, in programming, you generally use a plus, but in SQL, 2 pipes, and I will show you how that works. And basically, there's some requirements. You need to have values on either side because the system will look for the values that you're going to combine. And so to give you a syntax kind of sample, so string 1 is kind of a representation. You could think of this as a variable, or it could be literal as well, which means it will be enclosed in double quotes. And so first string, the double pipe, I added a little space there. Basically, the double pipe should be, or the double vertical bar should be together. And basically, you're adding these strings to each other. So in essence, and this should be common sense, when you're concatenating strings, the result is going to be a string. Now, hopefully you're not thinking, can we concatenate dates? Well, no. Generally, we're going to look at strings. Can we concatenate numbers? Yes, but it's going to the system will treat the numbers as, as alphanumeric, which means that if you're concatenating 1 and 1, you get 1, 1, which could be 11 or, so anyway, that's just kind of a way to think of this. So you can, and generally this is how you use it. You can use a concatenation operator, and that's what that's called, to link columns to other columns. And for example, and we're going to go through this, we're all going to do this together. So it is often used to create a readable output. That's its whole purpose. So in this example, on the next slide, I'm going to concatenate the department ID with the department name. Those are two different columns in the departments table, right? So if you ran this query, and this is just, we're not adding a space, and that's one of the challenges that I'm going to present you with. So let me ask you, you see here, our result is just this combination using this query, select department ID, the double pipes, department name from departments, and we get something that looks like this, which probably would not be readable. So how would you add a space in between the department ID and the department name? Who wants to answer that? Anyone but Vera and Sahasini. How would you add a space? Go ahead, Vanessa.
You put a set of those pipes, and then in between, just with one parentheses on each side, just blank.
One parentheses, no, almost.
Okay.
Almost. Anyone else? Jeff, go ahead.
So you do like the pipes, and then like a quote space quote, and then pipes again.
Yep, that is correct. So to add a space, which is very important, you probably want to have this be a readable result. This little pipe, double pipe, a space in between single quotes. Remember, that's just a string, and then double pipe. So now the output is you can read, it's more readable, right? Generally, you would have that on a report as opposed to the other output. So good job. All right, so one thing that I do want you to notice when you do this, all of this, as far as your column, becomes your column name. And generally, you don't want your output or your result table to look like that as far as your column name. You want to actually add what we call an alias. And for our purposes, there's a few ways to do this, but our purposes, we're going to use the as keyword. So in our little example here, we're going to write the query, select the same query that we created, and we're going to use the as keyword, as, A-S. And we're going to add the alias, and that's called an alias of our column, in between the double quotes. And we only need to use double quotes because we have a space here. And it will recognize that as a complete title or alias for your column. And just a point of information, if you don't have a space, you don't need the double quotes. But it is recommended that no matter what you alias, just put the alias within your double quotes and you'll be safe. And as you see, that particular label or alias shows up on your result table, as opposed to all of that information. So it is substituted for all of this. So if you're ever going, and you will, if you're going to create a concatenated column, make sure you alias it so that someone who doesn't recognize what you're trying to accomplish doesn't read all that information and become confused. Happens all the time. Any questions about that? Does that make sense to everyone? All right. Thumbs up. All right, you can actually add literal values, and remember the term literal just means that it's fixed data or something that you're adding to a column or whatever. You can add literal values such as character, numbers, or dates to your concatenation scenario. So like words like dollars or thousand or the date, the specific date. these are called literal values. This would be even though this is a date, this is actually a string because it's enclosed in double quotes. This is a number and this is another string. And it depends on what that data type is. So it is easy to create output that looks like a sentence using concatenation. So literal values can be included in the select statement with the concatenation operator. So you have to be aware of what type of data. Generally, a general rule of thumb, for our purposes, there's other ways to do this, but a general rule of, okay, I can talk. General rule of thumb is to concatenate strings, all right? And then use literal data if you need, unless you need to actually enhance other data in your SQL statement. So if you use literal data, it'll basically concatenate that depending upon your query to every row that matches your requirements. We're going to talk about requirements in the select statement. And I mean, some of you know this, but you have to determine what you're trying to accomplish with the whole idea of literal value. So take a look at this query and make sure you understand how it was built. So just select last name, concatenating it with this as a monthly salary of, and then the $, and then concatenating, okay, I can't talk to you, but concatenating that with the actual salary of the employee. And we're going to alias, remember the alias. And yes, I didn't include the double quotes, so I didn't follow my own rule, but I just listed that as pay. So that gives you, because it's one word and no space from employees. And you get this very readable sentence, right? King has a monthly salary of, and you can do this with one query. That's pretty valuable, right? So does everyone understand how I created that query? All right, now we can go even further. I think I have another. So what if we are, now before I show you, what if we wanted to know and display the yearly salary of each employee? How would we construct that? Who wants to? Because I said arithmetic functions can also be a part of your select statement. So can we do that? Who wants to give me an answer to, I would like the yearly salary of all the employees, an employee data, using concatenation. Last name has a yearly salary of, and then how do we do that? Anyone?
Just multiply by 12.
So I see select last name, McKinsey. All right, McKinsey, I'm going to take your query and run this in the developer so we can all see if McKinsey is correct. All right, give me a chance here. Can you all see my developer over my PowerPoint? Remember, click on your little SQL, open up your query. I'll build a page, and I'm just going to paste, cheat and paste. So this was McKinsey's query. So how many of you think that this is going to work? Produce the yearly salary. Vanessa says yes. Vera says yes. Sophie Cole, do you say yes? Yeah, all right, let's run it. And that looks pretty good to me, right? King has a pretty good salary. I'll take his. All right. Wayland, well, not so much. All right. All right. So does everyone understand how you can use concatenation to create a report like this? All right. Great. And that was my next example. So yes. All right. Any questions before I move on about concatenation and the magic you can do in your select statement. Nope. All right, let's talk about the distinct command. And basically you use this to provide a list of unique instances in your table. For example, if you want a list of all departments for employees, I mean, generally you can get that pretty easy, especially in our database. But you would first write a query to select department IDs like this. This is from the employees tables, correct? Employees table. Select department IDs. So you see there's some duplicates in there, right? Because there are several employees in that department. That's why you have more. So we just want a list of departments. So to accomplish that, we would use the distinct command. So, and this is how we would do that. Select distinct, and a rule of thumb, if you're going to use this distinct command in your select statement, you can only use it once, and it has to come after the select statement for our purposes. Now, someone may argue with me, but this is always a trip-up point because you're trying to, get distinct from other columns, but for our purposes, select distinct and then your column ID, your column name. There's other more complicated ways to do this, but for our purposes, it's always select distinct, okay? And that's kind of a tricky scenario because you may be asked to do something else. And basically you just need to change the order of the column that you want to provide a distinct representation from. And as you see here, yes, and null is actually returned in a distinct, even though it doesn't have a value. And all right, I'll ask you a question. How would you eliminate that null column? What would you add to your select command? I think we learned about handling nulls a little bit, but you overachievers, what would you would add a where clause, right? What would you put in a where clause to eliminate this null column?
Is not null.
Is not null. Where department ID is not null. Does everyone believe that will work? I see a lot of what? I don't know anything about that faces, so let's try it here. Select distinct department ID, department ID from departments where department ID is not null. No. All right, that's going to work, right? There you go. Woohoo! Little success dance. We don't have a null there, so that's, if you don't remember that, that definitely helps to clear up another way to handle nulls. So, and distinct gives you all of the departments. So, yep. So, and I talked about this, it must appear after the select, directly after the select. Remember that because that will trip you up on some of the different challenges that you'll have later on. All right, so our terminology for this particular topic in our module, topic 1, describe concatenation operator, which is the double pipe, right? And literal values, which are just basic string values, or calculations, right? On numbers or whatever, and then the distinct command. So you just learned how to apply all of these to create a specific type of report. And you can create sentences with data that's in your database. So I'm going to give you all a challenge. And that's one of the things I'm going to do a little bit different. So what I want you to do And the first person that can share this out will win the prize for the evening. I want from the employees table, concatenated last name, comma, space, first name, space, hire date. Last name, I'll put it in the chat because I'm making this up as I go. So from the employees, last name, and I'll write the column. Last name, comma, first name, space, and then hire date. Mackenzie, you're too fast. Go away. So you can just copy. Mackenzie's already solved the problem, so she wins the prize. At least I made her laugh. All right, Matt, you get second place. All right, it's pretty straightforward. It's just a concatenation scenario. So select last name, comma, space, concatenate first name, comma. Actually, I asked for just a space, so not another comma, but you're an overachiever, so I'll give you that. So, and then hire date. So it looks like that. It's okay, Mackenzie. Or was that? Yeah. Oh, both of you did this. All right. So that's describe, concatenation operator, literal values, and distinct. All right. Let's move on to topic 2 from this module, limiting rows selected. Now, I did skip ahead a little bit. I know generally the way you limit rows is with the where clause. That's primarily what we're going to use. But remember the syntax. This will help you tremendously throughout the rest of the course. The where clause is your very much your friend. So our objectives is to make sure you understand, you can demonstrate how the where clause can help, and explain why it's essential from a business perspective. One, because even if you're using wildcard, you probably have some restrictions as far as the number of records. And for our database, it's not a big deal, but believe me, there's databases out there with millions of records, and you certainly don't want to run a select statement to retrieve all of those records all at once. So this is where the where clause comes into play. And then our construct and produce output using query containing character strings and data values using the where clause. So why do we have to do this? So have you ever had information overload? We all have. Well, maybe I haven't, not for a while, because I kind of limit the amount of information I take in and then I ignore the rest. But most of us, we absorb all that information. That's the whole idea. You're streaming on your computer, your mom is asking, or your wife, or your daughter, or your sister, or even your dog is asking you about school. Well, maybe not your dog, but at least they're barking about school. Your cell phone rings. Oh, I did have dog barking, or cat meowing, or yeah, that's called information overload. And you're trying to get your homework done, blah, blah, blah. So wouldn't it be nice to restrict the amount of info you process on time? And so this is the purpose of the where clause. It's just a way to restrict the information. It's probably the most important part of your select from statement. Because generally you're doing something very specific. This is where the where clause, at least initially, comes in. So remember that. Yes, and I said this, you could be working with a database that's huge, and most of them now have many, 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 many records. All right, so we learned the select statement, and we learned that it has a minimum requirement of select and from. So select columns, all columns, or a specific number of columns, or columns from, and then your table. We all know the where clause is optional, but generally, as I said before, it is probably used most of the time, unless you're trying to determine how much data is in your database, which maybe as a database administrator, you do that, but yes, it is optional. It's not required. You can run any of these queries without it, but and here's just an example of what we've learned thus far. Remember, the distinct statement has to appear before your column. But the where clause is always after. So it's the order in a select statement is select from and then where, and whatever your conditions are. All right. So in the where clause, you can have column names, you can have comparison condition, you can have comparison values. Note, please, aliases cannot be used in the where clause. I did want to stress that if you create an alias, you have to use the original column name in your where clause. The where clause must contain conditions that must be met directly, and it should follow the from. So it is very structured, as with our language, as to how you present a where clause. So select from where. All right. So take a look at this very simple query that we've seen before. Select employee ID, first name, last name from employees. So what that will give us, we know we only have 20 employees in our little database. It'll give us all employees. But let's say we want to restrict some. By adding the where clause, let's say we only want to view employee 101, right? So it's simply select that query and then where employee ID, and this is a condition. Employee ID is equal to 101, right? Pretty straightforward. And we'll only get that. We'll only get Nina Kokar. So does that make sense to everyone? Thumbs up. Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Select statement is like retrieving data and also for projecting data. Is it both?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I mean, because you may not know the amount of data, so you may when we say projection, it's satisfying what your assumptions are. And I know we had that on the first quiz, and some of you got it right, some of you didn't. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so yeah, I think I have seen a similar question in module 1 quiz where when I have selected the choice for retrieving the information, it marked as a wrong answer, so I was confused a bit.
Yeah, I will apologize for that question. It is a little confusing on purpose. I was trying to, prompt you to do a little bit of critical thinking or critical guessing. But if you think about it, it can be used for predicting or projecting data.
Okay.
It's just a play on words. This is the oddity of the English language. So.
Yeah, like the question is like which select clause retrieves one or two columns from a table without including a where clause. The options given are like projection and selection.
Right. And the correct answer was both.
No.
Was it?
Projection only is the correct answer.
Oh. Okay, so I don't even know what the correct answer is, but yes, it's basically, yeah, I'm actually, I don't like that question either, but that is correct. It's more of a projection, not it's a projection and selection or projection and something else.
Here the choices like projection and selection, and the one more is projection only. I opted for projection and selection, it marked me as wrong answer, and it marked projection only as the correct
Correct
answer.
answer. Yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree with that. I'll probably go back and give you all credit for that if you didn't get it right.
Oh, thank you.
So thanks for pointing that out. It is projection and selection. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought I checked those, but yeah. So thank you for addressing that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's continue. All right, so you can use comparison operators in the where clause. In the previous slide, we just used the equal sign, but you can use others. You can use equal to, greater than equal to, less than equal to, or not equal to, whoops, in the where clause. So you can see, and this is a part of the whole projection. I mean, basically you're looking to see, provide a selection or restrictions based on some type of projection of your condition in your where clause, where you would use other operators than equal to. So let's look at an example. Here, we're just selecting all the employees that are in department 90. So you select employee ID, last name, department ID from employees, where department ID is about 90. All right, pretty straightforward. You can use character and date strings in the where clause. You can use numbers obviously too, but in addition to numbers, you can use character and date strings, character strings and dates clause may be enclosed in single, it must be enclosed, excuse me, in single quotation marks. So if you look here, an example, employee ID, last name, first name from employees where last name is equal to King, and we get Stephen King, right? So just remember strings and dates, double quote, or single quote, excuse me. So what do you think will happen if the where clause is written as this? What will happen if we rewrote that last where clause and ran this one? What will happen? Yes, Vera?
Because king is not capitalized on the K, it won't match because it is case sensitive.
Yep, case sensitive. So yeah, it has to match exactly. So even though you don't have a syntax error, you will return nothing. So be aware of that. Case sensitive SQL is truly case sensitive, not like languages. Some languages, C is case sensitive, but Python is not. All right.
Is there a method to omit case sensitive, or would you have to
Yes.
just write it multiple ways?
No, there's a method, there's a function, basically, and we're going to get to that later. So.
Okay, thanks.
But you have to be, essentially, to piggyback on that, you have to be aware of how the data is stored in your database. That's, you can add some particular functions to bypass that, but yeah. Good. You guys answered my questions. So this is an important point to remember. And to answer Jeff's question, there's keywords functions that you can use, upper, lower, and init cap, that you can actually add to a select statement to ensure that you have the right data. And we're gonna talk about those as well further into the course. Let's see. Take a look at this query and make sure you have a good idea. And yes, you can write this query now with two-digit or four-digit year, and it'll work. But select employee ID, last name, first name, hire date from employees where hire date is less than, yes. And when you say less than, we all know that it's all the dates before January 1, 2000, right? Does that make sense to everyone? All right. And as you see the result, I think that's all the employees. It's an old database. Everyone's been around a while. And also with numbers, just piggybacking on that a little bit. Select employee ID, same query where salary is is greater than or equal to 6,000. And once again, we get a specific result. And then finally, string. So this is the example of all the data types: date, number, and then string. Remember, date and string within single quotes. All employees that are in the IT program, IT. Yep. Does everyone understand those three queries? Date, number, string, or varchar, two. Pretty straightforward, correct? All right. All right, so if we ran this query, which rows will be selected?
Where class?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Where class will be selected first?
Well, no, what will be the result table? You can just describe it or explain it or
Salary. I mean, it brings all the employees' records whose salary is less than or equal to 4400.
that is correct. So that's the key here, because of the less than or equal to, it will return 4,400 in a result set. And sometimes, that may confuse people. But remember, less than and equal to will include the value that's indicated, because Jennifer Whalen's salary is 4,400, and yes, she's returned. And just note the difference. If it was just less than 4,400, then Jennifer's salary will not be returned. So just be aware of those little nuances. Yes. All right, this one was pretty straightforward. The where clause or comparison operators, pretty important. So please develop an intuition about this. I mean, SQL select statements are actually pretty powerful as far as returning data. The where clause is probably your best friend when it comes to restricting particular rows. All right, any questions about that? Nope. Vera, you had a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could go back to the comparison operators because I missed one of the 6 that were listed.
Which one?
It was the one that just showed the different options. So equals, less than,
Oh.
less than equals.
Well, you want to go way back.
Mm.
So there you go.
Oh, not equal. Perfect.
Yeah, not equal or the double less than equal to or greater than less than. Yeah, and in programming languages, it's a little different. Yeah, the exclamation equal will not work in SQL. Well, not work in Oracle. So please remember that. These 6 are your comparison operators.
Perfect. Thank you.
Welcome. All right, any other questions? One thing I do want to remind you, remember, our database operations are case sensitive, so be aware of how the data is structured in your database. And that will definitely affect the restriction for your return. Unless you use, and yes, Jeff, we're going to get into that upper or lower, you can use those to essentially eliminate or bypass what's actually in the database. All right, with that being said, we're going to continue in topic 3 with comparison operators. We're going to apply the proper comparison operator to return the desired result, demonstrate between, in, and like. Very well, these are very useful additions as far as conditions with the where clause. Yes, please, this one distinguishing between 0 and null. Remember, null is unassigned, unavailable, unknown, and inapplicable, and it could really, mess with your head as far as calculations and other attributes. But just remember, it is not 0 and it's not blank. It is really not known. And then explain the use of comparison conditions and null. We do want to address that. So we use comparisons in everyday conversations without really thinking about it. I can meet you between 10 and 11. I'm looking for a pair of jeans like the ones you're wearing. Yeah. And then if I remember correctly, the best concert seats are in rows. So that gives you some essentially real life type examples for these particular types of functions or keywords in your where clause. So these types of comparison are in Oracle, the in, the between, the like, and they will definitely help. Comparison conditions are used to find data, tables. Meeting certain condition, so building a select statement to return specific data is a powerful feature of any data. So we have these specific comparison operators, the 6, the 3 here, the main ones, less than, greater than, and equal. SQL does have others, along with the less than, equal to, not equal to, etc. The first one is between and I'll give you an example of that in a second. The second one is in, and that's usually a group. The third is like. All very useful. All can do certain different things. All can be constructed in a way that you can, lessen the amount of possibly, complexity in your select statement. So between and. The between and operator is used to select and display rows based on a range of values. So if you know the range, so we can use this in the where clause, and basically it is set to recognize a lower and what we call lower and upper limits. And remember, one thing you do have to remember, that between and are inclusive, which means that the lower and upper will be included in the search or the operators that you're searching for. So the lower limit must be listed first. So here's an example: select last name, first name, salary from employees where salary between 9,000 and 11,000. And I do want to make a note that both of those limits will actually display in your result. So it's inclusive. So what is that like? That's like less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, right? So it's the same notation, but you can use it between, and the syntax, notice the syntax, salary between 9,000, well, it's almost, English descriptive, and 11,000. So that's between and, or between ... and. All right, questions, comments? Got it? Makes sense? And I did want to point out the whole upper and the inclusivity here. So the between and is exactly the same as I said before, as using the greater than, equal to, and another operator comparison, and less than or equal to. But you see here the syntax, you would have to indicate it this way in your less than, equal to, as opposed to this way. So you see that's a little bit simpler to indicate, and this is a little bit more, although some individuals are very comfortable with that. All right, does everyone see the difference there? All right, but that's what it means. If you want an illustration of the comparison, and this seems to be simpler to read, right? And that's what I say. It's provides some code simplicity. All right, in. There's a little in up there. The in condition is also known as a membership condition. All right, so it is used to test whether a requested value is in a specific set of values. So for example, in could be useful to identify employees whose ID numbers are this list of employees, 100, 101, or 102. And departments' ID numbers are 40, 50, or 60. And the way that we do this, you see here, select employee ID, last name, first name for employees where employee ID in, and then you have to provide a list separated by commas. And you will, now this one is pretty simple and straightforward, but you may have conditions that are a little bit more complex than that. But that's n is followed by a list of values within the parentheses separated by comma. Okay. And that's n. And here's the department ID example. And we don't have a department ID 40, so that's why it doesn't show in our little result table here. All right, makes sense with me? Cool. So the in within the where clause can also be written as a set of or conditions. So remember, if you know your truth tables, you can, so let's say select city, state, province, country ID from locations where country ID in UK and CA, UK or Canada. So let's say we wanted to do something like this. Select city, state, province, country ID from locations where country ID is equal to UK or, so it's the same. I'm just telling you that this representation is the same. You get the same results. And you can see this is a much simpler way to write this, just like the other, just like the between and. So that's essentially why it was written. All right. All right, the like is a lot of fun, but you do have to be very careful about how, I will tell you this, about how this is used before we get into the example. So have you gone shopping to look for something that you saw in a magazine? Yeah, I think we all have. It's much the same in databases as far as searches. So this is probably, you can probably references to a search engine with wildcards. So a manager may know that an employee's last name starts with an S, but does not know the employee's entire name. Yes, we can help them out. In Oracle, the like condition allows a person using a database to select rows that match a certain criteria. And that could be strings, dates, or numbering. And it's usually based on a pattern. The key here, you're using the percent symbol and the underscore, and these are known as wildcards in your like. And these are used to construct a search for the like. Now the percent or underscore, and they have specific, you use them for a specific reason. The percent is truly, it represents any sequence of 0 or more characters based on its position. So here we have an underscore, a small o, which means, oh, I forgot to add the underscore. All right, the underscore represents a single character. Sorry about that. And this is an O, that's a small lowercase o. And the percent is any number of characters after the O. So one character before the O and any number after the O. So that's the percent underscore. And you see Kokar, Lorentz. So that's always, it's essentially KOLOMO. Does everyone see that? So you're probably wondering about, well, so what about the second O here? Is that going to confuse the system? No, it's just going to look for one character and then an O and then whatever else follows. That's what the percent will do for this query. Questions? Make sense? That can be quite useful in many, many different ways when you're looking for something that you're not quite sure. All right. We already went through this. So, which of the following names in our little example here will be returned by our query? Which ones?
All of them?
Who said all of them?
So
You were a little hesitant there, Sophie. Yes, all of them, right? SOOOFOMO. Even MO. You're like, well, there's nothing after it. Well, it matches that criteria, the first letter. So that's why, yes, that would return. That would return. That's the thing about wildcards. I mean, you don't necessarily have something matching that percent. All right, remember that. All right, some additional information and options. When an exact match is needed with a string, so this is what I just referred to. Basically, we call that like with the mo here, the percent is basically an escape character, which means that it doesn't necessarily need anything to match that wild card. So just kind of remember that. So for example, if we wanted to retrieve an employee job ID from the employees table containing underscore R, we would need to use an escape character to indicate we are searching for a character. So that's why we would use the, okay, let me go backward. So if we want an exact match, we have to use what's known as an escape option. That's the backward slash. So if we're looking for a very specific pattern, we can use the backslash with the word escape, and it will find exactly, so single character, we're just looking for anything before this underscore R, where this represents an escape, so it will return. Now, you're probably thinking you can probably satisfy this like with just a percent underscore R percent, and you can. But and I know in programming languages you do need that escape because there are other variables or other attributes. But this is another way. It's another option. You don't necessarily need to use the escape character. In my mind, that would probably complicate this query a little bit, but that's what the backslash is. Saying exact match basically is what is stating there. But because there's a reason why you would use that. It's the resources and the efficiency of the database, but even in larger databases, because of the resources, you don't really need to do that. I'll just state, I mean, it's you can run the wildcards and it would be fine. So just think of that as another option. And I do state that. You can use any character, but the backslash matches the programming languages as far as escape character. So basically what it represents is that essentially you come in here, any letter, and then you match. Oh, all right. I'm going around and round and round. So what I'm really saying is that if you don't put the escape character in there, the system will recognize this as another letter, right? A single letter. But we need to look for the underscore, right? We need to match the underscore in this representation. So you need the escape character to say match any letter and then the underscore and then R and then any letter. Because the underscore is a reserved symbol in your like condition. So that's why. And as I'm stating here, the backslash makes more sense. I mean, you can see that we're isolating the underscore in this case. And in this case, for our purposes, the underscore would be the only, or if you want to look for percent, you can do that as well. You would put the backslash in front of the percent. And does that make sense? I probably went around and confused you all.
With no backslash, just a percent is okay. Like
No, it wouldn't return this result. All right, since let's just try it here. We're going to take that query. no concatenation from employees. Where might be like. So let's just put percent underscore R in our double quotes without the escape. And we're defining the escape here. I'm saying this is our escape character with the keyword escape. But let's just see what happens if we just run this, right? You see, it doesn't recognize the underscore. It's just saying that that's a single anything and then a single letter and then R, which represents this Higgins AC manager, right?
Oh, okay.
See how that works? So if we put in the escape character, right, and then we define it, okay, we're just defining, oops, we want the percent. So any character, and then we're looking for the underscore and then R. And we're saying the escape in this query is the backslash. Whoops. What did I do wrong? Oh, I forgot the rest of the query. There. Now it returns anything and then an underscore and then an R and then anything else. That's
But underscore is missing, right?
you don't see it, but it's there. It's not showing in our results here. If you
Oh,
double click on the result table and then take a look at the value,
oh, okay.
see it's there.
Yeah, thank
It's
you.
just not displaying in here. Okay. Everyone see that?
Yes, got it. Thank you.
All right. So that's the use of an escape. And this could be anything. You just define it, within your select query. All right. And we just, mine was a little bit different, but that's what happens if you don't define. All right. So any questions about that escape character? I skip right over that. Does everyone understand what I'm doing here? Does it make sense now? All right. All right. So let's talk about is null and is not null. Another way to handle nulls that you probably don't want to display in your report. So remember null, remember it's unavailable, and remember it's really unknown, unassigned, it's not zero, it's not blank. But testing for null is pretty much often desired, in your queries, especially you saw in that example earlier. You probably don't want that null. And in our database, it does show up as null, but many databases, it'll show up as kind of an empty space or a dash. So if you want to test for null, the condition that you test for null is null, right? And it's basically tests to see what data is listed as null. If you want to test for or eliminate, well, basically test, use the keyword or key phrase is not null, as we saw before. Basically, use this a lot when you don't want to display the null values in your result table. So in the next slide, we're going to do an example where the where clause is written to retrieve all last names of employees who do not have a manager. So if you run that, then obviously our CEO or executive, so select last name manager from employees where manager ID is null, and you see that King has no manager. Okay. Now we did learn ways to substitute for that representation of null, but remember that. And how about, if you look at commission percentage in our employees database, we're just selecting all employees that have a commission percentage. So our query is select last name commission percentage for employees where commission percentage is not null. So is null, is not null, can be very useful. And you see we return all the 4 employees that actually have a commission percentage. So is null, is not null can be very useful for filtering and ensuring that your report is basically you're eliminating or including those null values. Null, don't really have a value. All right. All right. So there you go. Our terminology for this topic between, as far as where conditions and operators in your where condition, between and in, like, is null, and is not null. All very useful. You will use them in basically your 15. Let me stop sharing and go over. All right. All right. So any immediate questions about that before I go into the module and just review some of the aspects that are required for module 2. So, okay, on to Canvas. Here's module 2. I know you've all kind of missed Canvas. I will post the lecture in this lecture slot here and the recording. I normally post them in an announcement, but I think I decided to post it within the module, so it's readily available when you're going through the module and referencing some of the information. There are some videos that will augment what I've instructed today on the where clause, column aliases, comparison operators, all very good. Some of them are entertaining, some of them are pretty dry, but all very useful, all applicable to what you need to learn. So these are just resources. You don't have to watch all of them if you're comfortable with your knowledge about the where clause and condition operators. And then there's the practice queries. And as I said before, every single aspect of what I've covered, you can query in the developer, and they're all applicable to our database schema. So make sure you go through those and very comfortable with those. Yeah, there's nothing in there that should be over your head or anything like that. And then we have our practices. Remember the practice, and I do recommend going through the practice because that gives you information that you can use in the quizzes and gives you information that you can use for the upcoming midterm, all of that. And you have, vocabulary. Remember, this is practice. So, I mean, if you're an overachiever, you can go through it, all of it, and then it's to try and solve it. And these are very important because these scenarios is what you'll see in the quizzes and even in the assignment, building queries, selecting queries that you think produce a certain result. It's just practice, 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 practice. So since you've all been, well, maybe you all don't need practice because you've been running queries like every day for the last 2 weeks, right? Everyone, nonstop. All right. Yes, Vera, you have a question?
When you say use them within the quizzes, what does that mean?
Uh,
Like, is it just like preparation, or are you saying we're able to reference these? I'm
Um,
assuming not.
actually kind of both. It won't be
Okay.
exactly the same, but it'll definitely prep you for the quizzes. And you can reference, as a matter of fact, yes, I do take some of the quiz content out of these practice, just to see if you're going through them sometimes. So yes, so it's kind of both.
Okay.
Good
But
question.
I'm assuming these aren't graded, they're just for our
No,
own practice. And then when it comes to quizzes and exams, are we using the actual like application? Like if we were to save queries, would we be able to reference those or no?
I would prefer you do it that way. You can even
Okay.
copy and paste your screenshots into the quiz or into the assignment, definitely into the assignment. But you can actually
Mhm.
copy and paste into the quiz too. I'm okay with that. That tells me that you've actually, that's a good way, and some of you are doing that already. It's a good way to verify your answers. So, and especially those challenges where it's asking you to create a query, and you can do that. Canvas will allow you to do that. So definitely do that. The midterm you can't, and the exams you can't, but the quizzes, yes, please do that. So the developer is your friend. So definitely use that to your advantage as much as possible. So you have 3 topics of practice. The good thing about it, I'm showing you the practice and the solutions. I decided to put them together. So you have the practice and then the solutions. So you can reference, go through the practice and then take a look at the solutions. I'm okay with that. And then the assignment basically follows the same, the structure of the practice. And you're all doing pretty good, but with this, the one thing I do want to remind you, in these particular, especially the assignments, you can download this document, but go ahead and just copy your query and your result table into your response. So I'd much rather see initially, well, I'm not going to, well, it's okay. It is required. I want to see your query definitely. And that with that, you should also submit your results. So if you know how to, to take that screenshot, you can take a screen capture or a screenshot, your query and your result. That's how I grade these. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone? So definitely do that here. All right. So that's the assignment. And then let's do February 2nd, which is Sunday. And essentially, 2 points. So there's 10 questions or 10 challenges, 2 points per each. And there's a rubric. And then the quiz. As I said, it covers all 3 topics. I'm not going to preview it. I know you want me to, but you can definitely verify, even in some of the multiple choice questions, I would definitely take it and run it in. There's no restrictions on how you can solve, create the responses to the quizzes, but I would, verify. For the most part, you can do most of the multiple choice questions. So, and that's also due on the 2nd. So I'm going to welcome you all back. But it's pretty straightforward week. Nothing, just the assignment and the quiz. I will warn you, this is the easier part of the semester. We do, because of spring break and because of President's Day, things will pick up a little bit mid-February to the end of the semester. Just fair warning, because we lose 2 weeks. And then we have a midterm. And so just take a deep breath. I mean, there's a couple of Mondays where we may even go a little longer. because I had to compress a couple of topics. But for this one, I want to ease you back in. Of course, I'll get you started again, and then we'll have another break. But we'll keep the momentum going. So once again, we're on Module 2, the select statement and the where clause. There's tons of resources in there, and please make sure you finish the assignment and the quiz and submit them before February 2nd. We do have a late policy. I would much prefer not to dock any points. So I'm trusting that we will all have plenty of time. And if you have questions or issues, I am available. You can send me a Canvas message. I generally will respond right away unless today is kind of a crazy day. But please contact me if you're having issues. All right. Any questions or comments?
I have a question. I have seen, I think last week about online lab, and I don't know from where I need to join.
Okay, I need to set up a lab. We don't really have one specifically for 119. So what I will probably do, if you need to request a lab, I'll just create an office hours, either before or after the class. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, last week the mail has come that the lab hours from 7 to 8 or so. So for that reason, I'm asking, it was there on that day or it was cancelled or?
Yeah, it was canceled. It'll usually be Wednesday or Thursday, or even Friday. Although it really depends upon who needs a lab. And basically, the lab is that basically you share your screen and I can monitor your work or we can work together, things like that. We'll have to do it that way virtually. Generally, the in-person classes will set up a time where you come into the classroom and I'm just there to answer questions. So it's kind of the same, but it's going to be virtually.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to use it more of like office hours as opposed to a lab. And it really depends about if it's a number of students that want to come in and work through problems together. That's primarily what I'm going to set it up for. If that makes sense. All right. Any other questions? Can we handle this week without any issues? None. We're all ready to get going, right? Back in the SQL, open up that developer, run a bunch of queries. And once again, I do recommend that you just practice because it'll make a big difference when we get to the more, intense part of the semester. So I'm being very easy on you right now because you're just swinging back in. But anyway, I trust that you're all going to get the work done and we'll continue to move forward. All right. Okay, well, thank you.
Hey, Professor, I had a question.
Go ahead.
About the developer.
Go ahead.
I'm getting a couple error messages about my tables. I can put in the chat here.
Okay. So because I like everyone to help, I'm going to let you share your screen here. Give me a second. All right, you can share your screen and let's all take a look. Because we're all experts, not just me.
Yeah, so for the first one here, I got these cinnamon translation error. And then for the second one here, it's getting that it doesn't exist.
There's one specific thing that I can see that's wrong. Can anyone tell me what he has wrong with that query?
The name of the table is wrong, I think.
Oh, does this have to be,
Well,
is that different?
no, now take out the describe employees. Take out
Okay.
that two, just delete that. All right, now run it.
Yeah, I got the same error again.
Is it the semicolon there at the end of employees?
Nope, that's,
No.
No, I got that in there. I think I got all the tables. I did from the first class, I copy and pasted everything in there.
all right, expand your tables. No, you don't have all the tables.
Okay.
You have to go back and run that query. That schema query that's in
Okay.
the pre-class.
That text file, right?
Yeah, you don't have the employees table, that's why.
Okay, so just select all from the
No, there's
schema
a big
text.
long, no, there's a big long schema query that you have to run. So what's that CIS119DO tables?
Oh,
Excel?
that was the tables there, the XLS that I found on modules.
No, that,
I just hit open with it. I wasn't sure.
yeah,
I tried to fix it myself, really.
yeah. So there's, if you go back here, okay, stop sharing, I'll show you.
Okay.
Run. So if you go back into Canvas,
Yeah.
all right, so in the module one, there's this CIS119DO schema, not this,
Yep.
this one. It's a text file. What you need to do is, well, you can download it or you can copy it from here. You need to run this whole, it's a big, long, it's all,
I have that over here.
yeah, so
So,
select all, paste
okay.
your SQL developer, and run that. So here, I'll stop sharing. We're gonna watch you do that because we're all very worried now.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead and share your screen.
All right, so I just got done copying and pasting that. I mean, copying it.
All
There
right,
should be everything there.
big long query, run it. It may produce an error. That's
Okay.
fine. All right, then click on the little refresh, that little double arrow on connection right below,
Where is it? Over on the other side?
right there.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or close your ORCL or compress it.
Oops. Is it compressor? Where's that?
You know where it says over here on the Oracle connections, where it says tables,
Yep.
you can right click on tables, right click,
Okay. Let's refresh.
fresh.
Doesn't seem to be doing anything for me.
Not running. Hmm. All right, let's do this. All right, and you did run that. Let's see. All right, this is the puzzler. So if you click on your ORCL connection over,
Yeah.
just compress it. No, right below that. Click on the little minus. Yeah. And then click on the plus again.
Okay.
Then click on tables. Yeah. All right, let's close the connection.
Okay.
Is it possible that the copy from Canvas is limited and you just download the notepad and copy it from there?
Yeah, I did download from the notepad.
It should, well, scroll up to the top of that big long query. We just want to make sure in the query builder. Yeah, it's all there.
Yeah, I did select all from the document itself.
All right, go all the way to the top.
Okay.
Just use the little scroll bar here
Okay. Let's try.
on the right there.
Okay.
All right. All right. Your query is not running. Okay. All right. Okay, let's create a new connection. Click on the little SQL
Okay.
up here. No.
No, not this one. Okay.
There's a little SQL right in your toolbar to the right. It says it's hard to see.
Yeah.
Click that little SQL, right?
This one? Okay.
All right. Now paste that big long query in there.
Okay.
Running
Should I try to run it again? That query is not running. Did anyone else have this problem?
I was just trying it out, and I wasn't having issues before with like the other queries, but when I tried to do this like big long one, it doesn't seem like it removes like the tables and stuff like it's supposed to.
Well, it removes them and then recreates them.
I think I
Oh,
had to
I
hit
see.
the run button a few times for mine to get to go.
All in one query.
Okay. Gonna try to spam it for those good things.
Oh,
Hmm.
I tried doing the run script and seems like it's gone through every line.
Yeah, either way should work. Okay. This looks better. It just takes longer.
Yeah, hopefully this works.
So let it run. It'll take a few seconds.
Okay. What should I put for the value for B?
Just hit OK.
Okay.
All right.
Should I try a
No,
new
just
one?
expand
Okay.
your ORCL schema over on the left there in connections. The little
Okay.
plus underneath the database. There you go. You have your tables.
Yeah.
So now go back to your query.
Okay. All right. Yeah, these are the same. So
Yeah.
you there we go.
There you go.
It's working out. Thank you.
Thank you. Who was that? Was that Vera? You're the expert now.
Oh,
Thank you guys.
Related to
Appreciate
you.
your
no
help.
worries.
All right, so now you have your table. So yeah, make sure that's one thing you all should make sure you have all the tables. It should be a long list of tables in there. If it's a short list, then yes, that query then run. And yes, go ahead and run the little green arrow with the little document behind it. It'll run line by line. And so sometimes it works. It's based on the resources of your system. But all right, you all solved the problem. So teach yourself. That's it. I'm out. But All right, so we're all good. Just make sure you finish your assignments for next week and we'll go further and further into SQL. All right?
Sounds
Take
good.
care
Thank you.
and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good evening.